Hello everybody, and welcome back to our How to Move Your Body year-long home yoga program. My name's Brentan, and today we're going to be talking about the spine. We're going to be talking about how it's structured and then what is good for us to know about the spine and how it's put together for the purposes of movement. Because we know that there's certain movement potential in not just the spine, but in every joint of the body. That's what a joint means. It means we're supposed to move it. So there's movement potential there. And we know that the brain wants us to develop that, because we can see that when we develop these parts of our body, the brain responds by making the structures work better, feel better, and an overall reduction of pain, tightness, and inflammation. So let's go ahead and get started and talk about the spine. Now our spine is, for lack of a better word, I'll just say vertical. It's a vertical column of bones that are vertebra and collectively are vertebrae. And the vertebrae, there's several different ways. Like if you Google how many vertebrae are in my spine, you're likely to find a lot of different answers because it's not so cut and dry. Let's say there's 24 movable units. We won't say there's 24 vertebrae, but let's say there's 24 movable units in the spine. And some of those units are actually made up of more vertebrae that are just sort of fused together. So if you Google it, you'll probably see there's 33 vertebrae in the spine, but of those 33 vertebrae, only 24 are movable. So those 24 movable pieces comprise 4 different sections of the spine. And the sections of the spine are broken down by sort of like, okay, what do the bones look like in that area, because the bones change their shape, they change their size as you go up and down the spinal column. And because the bones are different, you know, what you have in your neck down here is going to look way different from a vertebra in your low back. They have different movement potentials. So some parts of our spine, very easy to do all of our joint positions like flex, extend, side bend, rotate. The neck, like I just showed, is one of those areas where it's very easy to have a bigger range of motion. Whereas in the middle part of the spine where the ribs are, that's a little bit harder to get that movement into. So if we're looking at like the different sections of the spine, we have 4, and we can just kind of look at them. Maybe I'll give you the side view. So our 4 sections of our spine start up here at the neck. This is the natural curvature of the neck. I'm going to call that the natural curvature. Its technical name is lordosis, but I think of it as like it's kind of naturally already in a back bendy-ish type of position. The vertebra, how they're arranged here. And then the curve changes more towards, like, I'll say like a forward fold position, or the technical name is kyphosis. So you have a lordotic curve up here, lordotic, and then you have a kyphotic curve from the right here where the neck stops down here to where the ribs are. So up here in the neck, in the lordotic curve area, we have 7 vertebrae. They start right up here where the skull attaches. And you can actually take, like, if you take your hand back here and you kind of just put pressure all the way on up, you should feel almost kind of like an area where you could hook yourself and like dangle yourself from the ceiling or something. That's like a visual I sometimes imagine. That's where it starts. That's where the head, it's called the occipital ridge in there. That's where it sits, right on top of C1. That's what it is. Cervical, you know, the technical name for the neck is cervical spine. So C1, all the way up here. Then you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and you can find number 7, or really T1. If you kind of bend all the way forward, you should have like one really knobby protrusion right where the neck turns into the thoracic spine. And it's sort of right there that, like, look at how much movement I can do in the neck here. And like it naturally kind of stops here because these vertebrae aren't shaped the same way. And so they have different ranges of motion associated with them. So it's harder for them. It's not impossible because they're all possible of doing different things, but it's just harder for them to move here. And that's why I'm feeling like, okay, the neck is going down, but the mid-back is still kind of lifting up here. So here's T1. T stands for thoracic, and thoracic is all the vertebrae, there's 12 of them, that attach to the ribs. So they end, you know, if you take your, where's the ribs, you can kind of dig in down here, you can kind of trace them all the way along the back, and they attach back here. And so the ribs provide this nice cage for the abdominal organs, and on the front they actually attach to another vertical piece called the sternum or the breastbone. So that's sort of like, I think about it sometimes as like the spine on the front. So that's what we have going on here. And then once the ribs end, we're getting into a different section of the spine, a different spinal curve. We're back to the lordotic curve here. It's the same as the neck. So the low back and the neck have the same natural curvature. And then the low back is also typically pretty flexible. So it can do a lot of this, it can do a lot of this. If you feel your low back pinching in some types of movements, like in back bends, or even I used to feel it in lunges, a lot of times that's because it's easy to move from these places, so we do out of habit, but that doesn't mean that we're evenly distributing the movement through all 24 of our movable spinal pieces. And so when we're not evenly distributed, when we have one section of the spine doing more work than maybe it quote unquote should, the brain's going to communicate to that with like that feeling of like pinchiness or pain or sharpness or something like that. So down in the low back, we have the lumbar. And then, and we kind of got into this a little bit when we were looking at the hips, because we looked at the pelvis. Now, once you get down, we have, you know, if I feel like, okay, well, where's my pelvis here? I got these bones over here, so I can kind of trace them back. Okay, so the pelvis is about right here, and you know where it is on the back because you have these, I don't even know if you can see them on me, but the back dimples. And the back dimples represent where the pelvis and the spine come together on the back. And they come together at a place called the SI joint, sacroiliac joint. Sacro, which means sacrum, that's the part of the spine that you're at. And then iliac, which refers to the bone of the pelvis. So it's really a straightforward joint name, even though it's kind of like sacroiliac, what is that? Yeah, it's just sacrum one piece, iliac another piece, come together. So the sacrum is a fusion of 5 vertebrae in the low back. And so that's why you get that discrepancy of, okay, well, there's 33 vertebrae, but only 24 of them are movable. And that's because the sacrum fuses in early childhood, and all of those different vertebrae are fused right there. And so the sacrum is right here, and it again changes its curve, its natural neutral curvature. Let me get my pelvis into an upright position here on the front. I can feel that. So, you know, the neck is in more of like the quote unquote back bend shape, the lordotic curve. The thoracic spine where the ribs are in more of a forward curve, which is kyphotic. Then you go back and you change again to lordotic in the low back, and right here at the sacrum, as it comes down to the tailbone, and that's where the spine ends down there, that turns back down into kyphotic curve. And so then the spine is sort of like this wavy structure up and down. And when we talk about neutral spine, which I'm sure you've heard of a lot, and we'll continue to talk about it as we get more into the movement aspects of this. But when we talk about a neutral spine, we're talking about respecting that natural curvature. And it can take a little bit of time, especially if you're not used to doing a lot of movement. and your body is just sort of like habituated to moving in the same way every single day, neutral spine, you may feel, is like already something to work up to. It's not, in other words, like the default or the given, because what can tend to happen here is that the natural curvature of the spine can become kind of like overly done just by like how, let's say you have a desk job and you're driving. When you drive, you take your hands in front of you. When you're typing, you're taking your hands in front of you. And that repeated day in and day out is taking your normal kyphotic curve in the mid-back and doing something more like this. And then with the neck, to compensate, it's doing a little bit more lordosis like this. And so you can kind of get into these situations where what you wake up with in the morning, the spinal curvature that you wake up with in the morning, is not necessarily a neutral spine. It's just a spine that's been habituated and its tissues have been habituated to sort of live in certain shapes more or less most of the time. So it's really up to each of us to kind of look at like, okay, do I have access to neutral spine? I would say that's probably our first question when it comes to movement. And if I don't have access to neutral spine in any one of my 4 sections, whether it's my neck, whether it's, I'll call this the mid spine, but you can call it the thoracic, my low back, aka lumbar, or my sacral spine down here, right? Am I being held back from neutral in any one of those 4 sections? And if the answer to that question is yes, then what can I be doing to facilitate some more neutrality there? What types of movements will be useful for me to kind of teach myself out of this? And I would think that, if you do these practices and over the next 5 or 6 weeks, we'll look at all the different spinal movements and we'll do them all. And we'll work on neutral spine. We'll call it centrated, like a centrated spine, and then moving your arms and your legs around that centrated position without disturbing it. But one of the things that I kind of wanted to show you, which I think is really cool, is if you want to kind of test out your neutrality, if you have like a dowel at home, like a broomstick would even work, but honestly, even a wall would be fine too. Just something that gives you like this nice vertical structure. And if I take my dowel behind me, what I can find here is if I can get my sacrum right here onto the dowel, and then I get my ribs back here onto the dowel, and then I get my head back here onto the dowel. And this may not work exactly for everyone because it depends on like the depth of your head from your ear back, or like how big your rib cage is. Like all of those things can add variation here, but I think for the most part this can be a very useful exercise. You can see, do I have access to neutral? Is there some part of this, like can I not get my head back there, for example, right? And so how can I feel like my pelvis is nice and upright, my rib cage is upright over my pelvis, my chin is about parallel with the floor, and I just want to see, like, does this kind of feel like neutral? And so if you can play around like this, one thing is like you could strap this dowel around you and just sort of walk around and see what it would take, like how you would need to use your legs and your pelvis to remain centrated in your spine. But another thing you could do, especially if you were using a wall, would be try to mobilize your shoulders around this, right? And so it's like, okay, how can I teach my shoulders how to do shoulder things while my spine remains in neutral? And the same thing with the hips. Could I move my legs around? All of that kind of stuff. And so I think looking at that, hopefully you'll start to feel your spine work better for you and feel better for you. So the last thing I wanted to go over before we wrap up for today is sort of like the movement framework that we'll be using to look at our spines and to assess and to move and to kind of batch out progressions for working and feeling better. And that is our joint positions, because that's really what we'll be looking to train. So the joint positions of the spine, I think we've gone over a little bit like the idea of flexion. So you can flex all 24 of those movable pieces into sort of like something that's more like that roly-poly type of shape. And then you have spinal extension, which is the back bend. And so, you know, I think in like a spinal flexion, remember how I said like our curves, I use them as like back bendy type of curves or forward fold type of curves. The reason why I'm using that language here is because it's really starting to make sense to me more, is like if I'm going more towards spinal flexion, which let's just call that like a forward foldy type of movement, I know that there are certain parts of my spine that are already designed in that natural curve. And because of that, they may have an easier or perhaps harder time doing that movement. So it's like when we train these joint positions, you know, when we were looking at the knee, that's one joint, but when we're looking at the spine, like I said, it's more than 75 joints, each of the vertebra attaching to their neighbors. And so when we go into these joint positions and we start training them over these next weeks, we're gonna wanna be looking at that and looking at like, is it easier for me to move some sections of my spine into certain joint positions? Do my vertebrae sometimes move as a big clump rather than me being able to segment and move them individually? You know, for back bendy, like I said, the low back is sort of already in the back bendy type of curve. And so because of that, for me and for a lot of other people who I talk to about these types of shapes, the low back can sort of overwork and over effort because it's already an easy position for it to be in. So it's like, I'll do more of the work rather than like, okay, my thoracic spine, where my ribs are their natural curve is the opposite. And so wow, would they benefit from just taking some of that ease and saying, hey, low back, I don't want you to move as much because I know it's easy for you to do that. And so I'm not getting much out of it. Instead, I want to hold you back from what you're capable of doing and send that movement into the vertebra where the ribs are so that I can get a little bit more open. And PS, like no matter how open we are up here, these vertebrae are still in that kyphotic curve. Like the mid back never actually goes into like a full back bend type of shape, which I think is really interesting. It always maintains still that little bit of kyphotic curve. But the point is that you can distribute the movement you're asking into the vertebrae and the joints that maybe don't have as much experience in those particular shapes or joint positions. So you have your flexion, you have your extension, those are sort of opposites of each other. Then the spine can also laterally extend, so it can go over the side of the pelvis this way, over the side of the pelvis this way. Again, each section of the spine has a different capacity for that, both based on its structure and our lifestyle and how we've used it up until today. And then one of the other things that the spine can do is rotate. Again, same thing, the capacity for rotation in all four of those sections, very different. What we're gonna be looking to do as we move forward is to really get all 75 of our joints working in all of those different joint positions. And my hunch is that if we are able to do that, first, we'll be able to find a neutral spine, a centrated spine. And then second, we'll see that our spine is starting to work better in everyday life, more capable, having an easier time with our movements. Things are feeling more second nature to us. And then lastly, they'll feel better. So that the brain, as it gains confidence in these structures, will reward us by reducing pain, tightness, inflammation, and making us feel better both physically and psychologically. So I don't really know if we need more reasons to move our spine than that. I think that does a pretty good job of showing us, you know, like what's in this for me? Well, the rest of your life, homie. So that's it. Thank you so much for your time today. I really appreciate it. I know there's a lot of videos out there on the internet that you could be watching right now instead of this. So stick around for next week. We're gonna start moving. We're gonna do all of our different joint positions. Then we'll work on centration at the very end of this spinal segment. And the last thing I want to say is that if you like what we're doing here, I invite you to donate to this work by joining us on Patreon. So I'll put a link down to our Patreon down in the description, and you can just head on over there and move closer to us that way. So thank you so much for your time, and I will see you here next week. Bye-bye.